Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
And I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very...
All right. Let's see.
Very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all. And certainly...
Oh, now we're reversed here. Let me see.
Our names are wrong.
All right. Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We're as you can see, I got a different background today. I'm actually in the office back in downtown Jacksonville. Ryan Backman, founder and executive director of Project Cold Case. With me tonight is Freda Washington-Perez, our victim advocate here in the office. Freda, thanks for joining me.
Not a problem. Glad to be here and to see you.
Yeah, Freda's home right now because we're trying these new 6 o'clock Facebook Lives on a new day. Lots of changes going around right now, but we've been back in the office for the first few days of this week and trying to get back acclimated to that stuff. So we wanted to come to you guys tonight for a little while and just talk about some things that we have noticed while we were working from home, while we were trying to advocate for our families. We were in constant contact with the staff and with each other. We were text threads, emails, Zoom calls. We were constantly, checking.
A lot of Zoom.
Yeah, a lot of Zoom. And so we were watching to see, kind of or acknowledging the issues that we were facing that were a little more unique than we were used to. I mean, it just was a weird time for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I know, Freda, you had a couple of situations that you dealt with that you wanted to kind of, that you brought up multiple times and that you were talking to me about. And I had a couple things that came across, while we were working from home that I thought were interesting and led to some other, just some more to know. We're constantly trying to educate ourselves and our families and our survivors and observe and learn how to cope with unique situations. And this gave us the perfect opportunity to observe a unique situation. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, Freda, and I'll get your take on and share with our watchers, and appreciate everybody that's joining us and saying hello. I've seen people from here locally in Jacksonville. I've seen people from Canada, Derek chiming in, Minnesota, UK is chiming in there. So, so we got people all over the globe watching us right now. And, so let's keep them entertained and let's make sure that they can get something out of this. Feel free to write questions too and comment in the comment section. We'll try to answer those as well. But something that struck me, and I mentioned this in a couple of our Facebook Lives, it seemed like we were really worried when everybody went home because one, we didn't know if law enforcement would be able to actually investigate during their downtime. In fact, we knew that there was going to be some things that they couldn't do. They couldn't travel. They couldn't interview people. That was going to be a huge block for our cases, for our families and their loved ones' cases. But then we kind of recognized that they weren't just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. The detectives, they were actually they were kind of getting back to those case files that they needed to review, that there was something in there that they needed to go back and look at, or that they needed to review for the first time. And they really started doing that. And it was beneficial in cases. They were able to refamiliarize themselves with the cases. And they started reaching out to some of our families and letting them know, that they were making progress, that they, hadn't forgotten about their loved one's case, that COVID-19 wasn't shutting them down completely. But we saw that the families go from, just kind of acceptance that nothing was going on with the case to then hearing something was going on and then wanting a resolution right away. And it happened in a few of our cases where people were the detective just called me and they've found something, or they've got a key piece of evidence has come back from the lab and it's something new. It's a new tip or lead. And so they, they're like, so when they make the arrest tomorrow, you know what I mean? Or whatever. We were like, wait,
we're still dealing with the
now
isolation.
is the time that we need you to be patient. You have been so patient all of these years, and now it's starting to move a little bit. And now is really the time to be patient. And I want to talk about that for a minute, and not specific about the cases, but a little bit more detail. But I just saw that April commented and said that she and Candy will be back in Florida in July, and we'll try to meet up again. And April, if you guys will reach out and let us know if you know what dates you're going to be in Florida, and if you're going to be Panhandle or over here, let's get together and talk, because our local media caught wind of y'all's case and wanted to feature it. And the detectives actually switched and did another case at the last second, because I know I reached out to you guys and let you know that the media was interested. The media person is still interested in doing that case and has asked the agency if they can do it maybe at a later date. So if we could maybe time that where you guys are here, and we could do all of that together, maybe that would be beneficial. Anyway, reach out to Freda or me, and
I'll follow up as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that and see if there's any way that we can do that. So, but anyway, back to sorry, I'm reading one of the other comments. Today is Jessica Langford's deceased sister's oldest daughter's birthday, and her baby is due July 1. Oh, wow. So now you're taking that role of grandmother, Melissa. So thanks for sharing that with us. It's so hard when a moment that's supposed to be a happy moment, also carries with it a dark cloud, birthdays and new births and babies. But we're thinking about you guys. So thanks for sharing, though. Also wanted to, to get back to mention, so one of the things I noticed was that as families, we train ourselves to keep our expectations low. It's very unfortunate, and I don't like that it's that way, but it's also the safe way to protect ourselves so that we don't get our hopes up and get disappointed every single time. But by doing that, we're kind of, again, preparing ourselves, and then we get that word back from detectives, that there's something new to look at, that there's a new lead. And then it's all of that is out the window, and then those expectations, become really high again. And it's real important to kind of keep that stuff, try to keep it in balance, because a new lead on a old case doesn't necessarily mean an arrest is imminent. Sometimes that lead could point to somebody that's already deceased, or it could point to more questions than answers. It could point to, a new person that now muddies the waters a little bit. You know what I mean? So we've been dealing with a lot of that lately, and it's just one of those things that I noticed that like we now are educated on that to be better prepared when these detectives have these meetings with families, and there is good news and good information on the actual case and the advancement of the case, like to kind of remind families that like, okay, now's the time to kind of just sit back and let the detectives do their job. They are working on it. That's what we've been trying to get for so long, is that it's an active investigation, and that means let them do that. And so
and I
we've had
think
some families get really, really excited, and we've had to kind of dial them back and be like, and there's been situations where they want to push more publicity on the case, and sometimes that's not the best idea when it's an active investigation and the detectives are working on something, because we want to keep that that publicity in case that lead doesn't pan out, and then we haven't used up everything we have in a short amount of time. Sometimes we need to be able to spread that stuff out. So so
I
that's
know
kind
from my interactions with some of the families, I know here locally we had some positive movement that we talked about, where detectives were able to get to some of those cases. But what I was hearing, because we do work with families nationwide, is some of our families are, either they're calling in or I'm calling to check in, and they have that sense of, great, nothing's going to happen again, and I'm like trying to, keep them aware that you can still reach out during this time and continue to engage with law enforcement, but I think just that shock of, everyone's out of offices, no one's working, that kind of hampered their, that forward movement we were working them toward, to like kind of being defeated again, like, great.
Yeah, and a lot of that, we saw like all of the media spots that we had lined up, went away. They were canceled. And now we're waiting for them to pick back up. And while some of the news stations have been cleared to do other stories, it had been all COVID. Now we've moved into another area of excess media with protests and looting and rioting and murder, recorded murder, and so those things are dominating the media again, and what always happens, cold cases get bumped. You know what I mean? They're always at the bottom of that priority list, and then when something significant happens, whether it be a pandemic or national outrage, like our cases are the ones that are kind of getting bumped below. So it's unfortunate. But that's one of the things that we deal with, and so we will, but we're not going to forget, our list grows longer and longer and longer, that when we get that opportunity to talk again, then, we're like, okay, well, we need an update on this one. We need you to look at that. We need this and that. So we will get there. Freda, what were some of the other things you've kind of noticed?
Well, definitely the bigger thing when we all shifted to, working from homes, the bigger thing was just changing the narrative and how we're able to offer services to our families. The biggest one was the grief support. We wanted to ensure that was continued, but I'll get back to that one. But one that was kind of heartbreaking to me was right in the height of the isolation. I was, reaching out to our families, be it anniversary or just checking in. And I had a lot of families that I recognized were struggling. I'm not sure what their social system was, but in particular, I had called a family to check on her, and this survivor was older. And, I'm speaking with her about, just remembering her loved one, but she really didn't want to engage with me about it. Very kind of limited. But, as I'm trying to end the conversation, she didn't want to hang up. She's re-engaging me with, conversation that really had nothing to do with, her grief. It was more or less just, hanging on the phone. And I felt so horrible because, I'm like, I'm not necessarily trained to offer, those services or, offer her, what she was looking for. But I really got the sense that she just, maybe no one calls her. But that was really heartbreaking. I know I spoke specifically to you about that,
Yeah.
about how the conversation and interactions are changing.
Yeah, and I know we were having an ongoing list of people that we felt like we really needed to kind of check up
Mm-hmm.
on,
Mm-hmm.
just because maybe their situation with their family was strained
Yeah.
prior. Maybe they were kind of isolated,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, and didn't have the resources or the assistance that somebody to reach out and just check on them. And I don't know, anybody that wasn't, in some way mentally affected by the
Mm-hmm.
quarantine. I mean, and I speak from experience. I mean, there were days where I just was like, I don't care. I'm done. Like I'm not going to do anything today. I'm not going to, and it was starting to impact me, mentally. And you have to, if you can't recognize it yourself, or you're in too deep, to recognize it yourself, you have to have somebody out there that can recognize that in you and help you out and just offer you some words of of advice or compassion and help you get through to the next day. And so I know that there were families that we were particularly concerned about. And
Mm-hmm.
then I know that there were families that we didn't know to be concerned about
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have that good of a relationship with them or that long of a relationship with them. They don't know us that well. And that was overwhelming to know that there are people out there that need us, but we don't know, to reach out to them. And so, we tried to do a lot with social media to keep people engaged and make sure that that everyone knew that we were still available to them, whether it was, from just a phone call. You and I started doing Zoom conference calls
Yes.
with
Mm-hmm.
survivors, and we were getting just a great response from that. It can be hard when you're just talking to somebody on the phone or you're,
Mm-hmm.
you know, conversing via email. Like you and I did that with a number of survivors, and it was like,
And I think it changed because, ordinarily when I do intake, people are usually juggling submitting their loved one to us while they're working, while they're
yeah,
doing all these things. And so when I reach out, the intake was, a little more brief. I didn't have as much information, but people were sitting at home. So
yeah,
they had, compiled all this information. They want to let us know every step they've taken. They had the time to focus and be energized on their loved one. And so then it was just like, well, if we're going to be on the phone, we should at least do face to face and kind of get an idea of everything you're doing,
yeah,
from a collective stance. But I did notice our intake process became much longer during
yeah,
now. I mean,
yeah,
it's just much longer. People have more information to give you. Because of course we verify all our cases. We want to see what you have, and that way we can best direct you on how to engage.
yeah,
But definitely the video conference, I liked it. I told you I think we should,
yeah.
keep it. I like that part of the
We're going to
intake.
try to incorporate that into our intake, and then for those watching, like that is an option always. And
Mhm.
we may forget to mention it, or but don't hesitate to reach out to us and say, hey, I want to have a video conference
Mhm.
with the Project Cold Case staff and myself. And, I mean, that way, we're paying attention. We know you're paying attention. And
Mhm.
like Freda said, a lot of times our families are trying to, they're trying so hard to get the information to us as quickly as possible that they're not always in a position to
Mhm.
talk about it, or they don't have the extra photos with them or anything like that. And if we schedule a Zoom call, then that gives families a little bit of time to prepare, maybe prepare some questions, get some photos together, to share with us. And it really, short of being in person, it's a lot more personal than a phone call,
Mhm. Mhm.
So
But yeah, I think that was one of, the surprising, things that came from, I never considered, having that part of the intake, but I'm like, this is actually pretty good. It gives you that connectability to people and definitely, I definitely enjoyed doing that and offering that service.
Yeah, I'm gonna show a couple of these comments on the screen here because I think that they're important. We touched on, um, you know, kind of depression and having that stuff affect you, but when you add it to the pandemic, you already have grief and you're dealing with sorrow, and then you have the pandemic and you're isolated and there's nobody to talk to, or there's not the same level of engagement with friends and family as there was prior. It does debilitate you. I mean, Judy nails it with this comment. Like that stuff is debilitating anyway, and if anything adds to it, it can just really really impact somebody negatively and really put them in a bad place. And we just, we don't need any more loss in this world. You know what I mean? And so we want to be there for our families. And anyway, like Freda said, we're not trained to be, grief counselors per se. Those people go to years of training and education, but we can certainly be a listening ear or shoulder to cry on. So, and I wanted to share this one too, if from April, she talks about, appreciating what we've done, but she says, if you have not met with them in person, you need to. So, when every now and then we get these families that don't live here locally, but they're passing through for some reason, or they're nearby for some reason. And I love it when they call our office and are like, well, is it possible that we stop by? I mean,
Yeah.
we just want to put a face to a name and we want to meet with you. And that we were able to do that with April. And, and it just like, we love, to have that interaction with the families. Obviously right now that's been difficult. I know Freda wants to talk about the virtual support meetings, because we typically held in-person support meetings here in our office, but people can't always show up to that. They're not available, or even worse, they don't live around here. So, so it's definitely, another growth for our organization to do virtual support meetings. But yeah, there is nothing like those in-person meetings. I mean, it warms my heart when a family calls and they want to come by and meet with us and talk with us and sit in here. And we've been able to do that with a lot of families. And I appreciate April saying that, because, that's kind of a good reminder, that if you do find yourself in downtown Jacksonville, or you're going to be down this way, give us a call, and let's meet. One of our board members, Latrice, has joined us over here, I see. So she's saying hi.
Hey, Latrice.
Derek says he may be able to refer another family to our guys. Keep an eye out for a 1990 Greeley, Colorado case. So yeah, Derek, we appreciate that. Anybody that knows somebody, sometimes when you are a survivor, you end up finding yourself, in a position where you meet other survivors and other families. And if that's the case, please refer them to us. We can't, we don't actively go out and try to pursue families. Believe it or not, there are some families out there that would prefer not to talk about, their loved one's case. It's not very common. It may be a family member, doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't want to deal with it. But for the, but there are families out there that don't want it, and we don't want to force that on them. But a family, that's why our process is our process, that you have to reach out to us. We're more than willing to reach a hand out to you, but you got to be willing to reach back. And there's just so many families out there that need help and want it, that we focus on the ones that want it. And
that was another thing I noticed. We had an uptick in submissions from people who were trying to be helpful, be it interest, maybe they lived in the neighborhood, but, we always explain our processes. We try to ensure we're including the family, in any awareness campaigns. And, thank you for bringing that loved one to us, but can you, have the family reach out if possible? But I noticed we had quite a few case submissions from just, people just digging through news or looking at old cold cases, which seems to be popular, in our culture. People want to help out, but I'm like, just because it's public record and it's information out there, we still want to be delicate with our families.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want if there's a family that is kind of traumatized by seeing their loved one's image on a website full of murder victims, or hasn't properly dealt with their grief, we don't want to shock them and surprise them and potentially re-victimize them by them finding their loved one on our site without having had some knowledge that it was, going to be submitted. And unfortunately that has, some people might actually, and we love that, community supporters and friends care enough about these cases to share them. But the flip side of that is we had a situation early on in our existence where a case was submitted. We were confirmed, via media that it was a homicide, that there had been an article about it years later, that it was still a cold case. We put it on our site. And then in conversations with the law enforcement agency, law enforcement said, that case is not cold. It's not unsolved. Like we solved that one, but the suspect was dead. Had died in a car crash years later. And, but we met with the family, we've told them that, like, they know. And what had happened was a very close friend of the victim from childhood had lost touch with the family. But then they submitted the case to us, but they had not had contact with the family in a long time. And it turned out that the family was not, they weren't pushing for more information or justice. They had accepted that the suspect was deceased and that they were not going to get their day in court. So it was a little bit, shocking to have them on our site.
When we get those, excuse me, and when we get those case submissions, I do reach out and, articulate all of that, definitely thanking them for their interest. But, I always am cautious to remind them there may be information or, something the family knows and are aware of now that you may not, because, you were a longtime friend or you were a neighbor, coworker. I'm like, so there may be, some kind of resolution that you're not aware of. And to give them that perspective, they're like, oh, I didn't consider that. Yeah. I'm like, so that's why we ensure we're working with the family so that we're not, unharming them in a way where, maybe they've accepted that. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I see Derek's comment about, suggesting it. I mean, that's, we love what you do for us, Derek, and your, your assistance in those cases and referring those families. It's happened where, a family has been referred to us and then they choose not to, for whatever their own personal reason is, and that's fine. And like I said, we want people to refer other families to us.
Certainly to Derek, I heard Derek Charles's name the first week I was in the office. I knew that, he was definitely helping our cause. And so it's funny now, but that's, I knew Derek, him the first week there.
Yeah. Derek, almost, he was credited with actually being an employee of Project Cold Case the other day. I think somebody was sending us private messages and asked if it was Derek they were speaking to. So, Derek is heavily involved.
Very active, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, very active. So, So we appreciate Derek's work and everybody's work that shares, that posts, that comments, that engages, with our posts, because that's how we reach people. And, so that's kind of a big part of being able to help people is actually having, people that trust us, that refer us to other families. So that's a big, big deal. Freda, let's talk a minute about the support meeting, because We did a virtual support meeting last week. We've done 2 virtual support
Mm-hmm.
meetings now. We've had a really good response.
Really good response to it. Definitely. We definitely wanted to continue our grief support, but of course with the virus that wasn't feasible. But the idea of doing the virtual griefs, we didn't know if it would work, but surprisingly it did. I think our families kind of, took to it. And then of course we're able to offer our services and just that support for our families nationwide.
Yeah.
And, that's been a real big, like I'm just happy that they are taking advantage of, that opportunity. And like you said, it definitely combats some of that isolation that some of our survivors feel. This is our second one, so we're going to be hopeful for a third one.
Yeah, we'll have another one at the end of June. And I expect that one will be good. We're still learning the best way to do it ourselves. It's hard to let everybody have a time to introduce themselves and talk about their loved one, and still, have time to pick a topic and talk about it. But we're working on some more efficient ways to do that, where maybe we'll have a topic pre-selected, the more people that we want, as many people that need the service, to participate. But that obviously, makes it harder to give everybody, time to tell their story. So
I think that was one of the things that we were very apprehensive, we can invite, but how many people are going to show up and can we moderate and handle? But surprisingly, it's been working out great.
It has.
Being able to offer that and just changing with how the times are changing.
Absolutely. Freda, was there other stuff that jumped out at you, that you specifically wanted to talk about? Because we have another topic that we want to get to, but I wanted to make sure we covered some of the stuff that.
No, I think that the 2 bigger ones were the ones that we already brought up. Definitely, combating, that isolation and ensuring our families know that, it's not hopeless. Just because people are limited in an office, they're still working. We're still working. We just got back into the office this week. We're already reaching out to our local, neighborhood collaborations to offer our usual services, but, be creative to find other services.
Yeah.
But definitely, I know personally as an advocate, the bigger issue I've seen was, our families not only dealing with the trauma of their cold case, but having to now also deal with, how, the social issues that are going on, but as well as that isolation, and that's just been unfortunate for, for all of us to witness.
Yeah. And we want to talk a little bit about some of those social issues, because it would be irresponsible not to mention it and bring up what's going on out there right now. But before we get to that, keep an eye out. Clint has been working on a new graphic for Facebook for a social media post with some ideas for keeping your loved one's case in the forefront, for advocating for them, yourself. He shared with Freda and I a great looking graphic yesterday. So we expect that to be coming out soon with some more pointers and tips and ideas. But with that being said, the things that are going on in our country right now, and the social dynamic, we feel like it's the responsible thing to do to talk about that a little bit. And we come from a very unique position. We deal with murder every single day. We do read police reports. Sometimes we read newspaper articles. We have families in tears telling us in great detail about the loss of their loved one and the trauma that went along with that. And one of the biggest, things we hear about that haunts our families is, they were alone. I couldn't be there to protect them. I couldn't be there, to save them. And what we have now all witnessed with the murder of George Floyd was the opposite kind of feeling of, I just want to know what he was thinking. I want to know what they were feeling. I want to know what they were saying. and to our horror, we all witnessed
Mm-hmm.
what somebody being murdered was thinking and was saying, and was begging for help, and expressing what they needed, and was ignored. And it was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. I think no matter how much you hear stories like, of murder, and, to witness it, to see it in a video, to hear those words, it is traumatic for a casual observer, for somebody that just, happened upon it on social media. But for his family to have had to witness that, for there to have been, a number of people around surrounding him, some of which could have helped and didn't, and others which were, felt they couldn't help, and so they had to just stand there and witness it. There's no recovering from that. There will be long-term impacts, and on the social side of that, we saw something that is not the first time we've heard of it. It's not the first time we've seen it. We have been advised of police brutality. We've been advised of minorities, people of color, having to deal with a different circumstance when they're engaged with law enforcement at times.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes our role is not to talk and is to listen. And that is one thing that I have been trying to do a lot of lately, is listening and understanding. Freda, we have had some pretty intense conversations here in the office, not intense as in aggressive, but as in very, very impactful and very deep.
Definitely. And I think, as for all the same reasons that you mentioned, with us knowing exactly what the victim, what George Floyd was thinking, and for all of us to have witnessed it, it kind of puts us in an odd place because, a lot of times our families don't know who committed the act. There were no witnesses, but here we are watching, in real time what's happened. And, just being able to have to pause and say the process does work, it did put me in an awkward position because, I mean, although there is, a change today, as of late this evening, it kind of, you listen to what our families are telling us, and you have to wonder, how slow that process works. And it definitely, it's led to some interesting conversations. I know personally with my own support systems I have, and definitely, like you said, with me and you, and I think that's good.
It is. We have to have these conversations, and quite honestly, we have to be uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not listening. And it's time to give the respect. And I saw Latrice saying, commenting to to just be there. And and that's so important, and we want to be there. We are there for our families, but we have a whole country of hurt right now, and and we want to be able to assist however we can with families that are hurting. We want to stand with people that are demanding justice and change. That is something in a slightly different manner that we have always been fighting for justice, but it's a different situation. But it is interesting to see a lot of the same quotes that we have used, for years, are being used now, and that makes it hit close to home because there are those parallels where we have been fighting for justice, and we have been fighting to be recognized and noticed, and that cold cases are still important. And, so it gives us a very unique perspective, because it gives us at least a foundation to understand some of it. We work very closely with law enforcement. We work very closely with the families of murder victims. We, see good and bad on a daily basis. And it's difficult sometimes to watch and see, what the hurt that is out there right now. And I know, Freda, we had, very deep conversation, yesterday about protesting, and had we ever done it? And, we talked a lot about like how everybody has something that they will protest for, right? They may not get out there and hold up a sign about racism or police brutality or violence, or cold cases or gun violence. That may not be somebody's cause, but I can promise you, everybody has something that they would stand up for. And I think that it is important to remember that just because something may not be your battle and your cause, to show the respect of the people that are fighting their battle and screaming out for their cause. And, we would want people that haven't been impacted by unsolved homicides to show us the respect of listening to us. And I think that's kind of where I am in what's going on in society right now. Is I want to put myself in a position to be able to listen, and if I can help in a certain way, to be able to do that. But I also recognize that the color of my skin has not put me in those positions that George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and so many others have been put in. And so my opinion of those things, quite honestly, isn't very important. What I need to do is be able to hear and listen and see the people that are being impacted right now. And that's what
And I think that's one of the things we talked about is, being able to actually listen and being forced to be uncomfortable. We've had conversations that I don't know we would have had this not happened, on a level that we haven't had personally. But I think just being able to listen and definitely how your actions, how you're going to go forward with what we know, what we've all witnessed, and how, we may not be out there protesting, but how are our actions going to impact greatly later?
Yeah.
And so, I think I've shared with you, I've had some longtime friends reach out to me, and I mean, like, great. They're wanting to engage, they want to talk. And so I think while people are talking, we should also leave room for listening.
Yeah.
So,
and we want our families to know that we are here to, to listen to you, and we do see you, and we do want to hear you. And again, sometimes I think I told you yesterday, Freda, like, nobody asked my opinion, because it's, my opinion, like that's all I see on Facebook is opinions, you know what I mean? And I told you I haven't posted on social media, but I had typed out, one thing that I was going to post, and then I just deleted, because I think it's time for listening. But the post that I was going to make was, like, I see a lot of talking, but not a lot of listening, and I really think that people need to be heard right now. And that's something that we do with our families regularly, is we hear them. And we have also seen what it does to a family that is heard. You know what I mean? Like, and in our situations, those are cold cases, and those are unsolved murders where they feel like they're being ignored, and that nobody cares anymore, and that nobody remembers their loved one. And we hear them, and that is probably the biggest thing we could do for a family, is hear them and let them vent and let them voice their frustrations, and then be able to let them know that their frustrations are justified, their feelings are justified, and that we still, we support them, and that it's okay to be mad at the detective on your loved one's case, and it's okay to hold them accountable. We always encourage you to have a working relationship. That doesn't mean you're best friends and go out and grab dinner together, but there should be a mutual respect there, that you call them out when they need to be called out, and you praise them when they need to be praised. And I think, that's how we should be raising our families and have the same expectations of family and friends. I know my friends fully expect me to call them out when they're doing something that needs to be called out, and I expect the same from them. So, but it's a mutual respect, So, Freda, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not
I was part of a webinar a couple weeks ago that shared Amanda Gorman's laureate poet, her poem about the COVID-19 virus, the coronavirus, and quarantine. And it was very inspiring and moving to me when I saw it during this webinar. So then during our support meeting last week, we closed the support meeting with that same poem and that same scene. And I would like to do that again, tonight. So we already saw my tech skills as we were coming into this thing. So bear with me, but
definitely, it was a beautiful piece. I definitely loved it when you shared it. I think if, our viewers take the time to really listen and, just hear what she's saying, I think it'll add a little bit of inspiration to their day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you pulled a quote because the parallels to grief and loss were there. This was very specific to COVID-19, but the parallels were there, and you had pulled a quote. I don't know if you have that with you. Do you?
I do, but my tech skills aren't that great.
No. Just I'm going to play it, and I don't think anybody will be able to hear us talk while it's playing. But find that while it's playing, and then we'll close out with your reminder. Let's see if I can get this thing showing.
I thought I'd awaken to a world in mourning, heavy clouds crowding a society storming, but there's something different on this golden morning, something magical in the sunlight wide and warming. I see a dad with a stroller taking a jog across the street. A bright-eyed girl chases her dog. A grandma on a porch fingers her rosaries. She grins as her young neighbor brings her groceries. While we might feel small, separate, and all alone, or people have never been more closely tethered, the question isn't if we will weather this unknown, but how we will weather this unknown together. So on this meaningful morn, we mourn and we mend like lights. We can't be broken even when we bend. As one, we will defeat both despair and disease. We stand with healthcare heroes and all employees, with families, libraries, schools, waiters, artists, businesses, restaurants, and hospitals hit hardest. We ignite not in the lights, but in lack thereof. For it is in loss that we truly learn to love. In this chaos, we will discover clarity. In suffering, we must find solidarity. For it's our grief that gives us our gratitude, shows us how to find hope if we ever lose it. So ensure this ache wasn't endured in vain. Do not ignore the pain. Give it purpose. Use it. Read children's books, dance alone to DJ music. Know that this distance will make our hearts grow fonder. From a wave of woes, our world will emerge stronger. We'll observe how the burdens braved by humankind are also the moments that make us humans kind. Let every dawn find us courageous, but closer, heeding the light before the fight is over. When this ends, we'll smile sweetly, finally seeing in testing times we became the best of beings.
Let's see, there we go. Now we're back. So I hope you guys were able to enjoy that and that it came through. Freda, what was that quote that you pulled from it?
So first, just such a beautiful energy from that young lady. I had heard it as you gifted it to us during the grief support. And, all of us carry some form of grief. We're burdened by something that weighs heavily on us. And the part that spoke to me that I had to immediately, leave grief support and find out who is this poet, who has given us this spoken word. But the piece that I shared with you that stood out was, for it is our grief that gives us our gratitude, shows us how to find hope if we ever lose it. So ensure that this ache wasn't endured in vain. Do not ignore the pain, give it purpose, use it. And that was just such a pronounced way of putting what most of us feel daily, So I thank you profusely for, sharing that.
Thank her. Amanda Gorman, I think is her name. And she is a spectacular young woman and putting into, beautiful poetry, inspiration for all of us. With that said, I think we'll close it out for the night. If you want to be a part of our support meeting at the end of June, please reach out to Freda at our office, 904-525-8080. Or you can email her.
Yeah, it's changing now. I'm like, you can email me, you can text me, you can, call, however
right.
you want to
text that number too.
Now. So just let me know you want to be included, and we'll ensure you get the link so that you can join the grief support, the virtual grief support.
If you want to have a Zoom call with Freda and I and chat about something specific, call, text, email about that, and we'll schedule something. April chimed in again while that video was playing about, her and her sister, when they came to town, they had no idea, the detectives had a legitimate case file. There was always kind of this fear and thought that their mom's case was minuscule, but there had been a lot of work done. And the detective, like April said, her sister came to town, met with us. We scrambled and got the agency to meet with them the next day. And then we went out there and sat in on that meeting as well and assisted. And I think a lot of questions answered, but then there were a lot more questions that came with that too. And our work is not done in that case. So we continue to think about them and try to help and try to get answers in their mom's case. But so again, support meeting, Zoom conference, let us know. Appreciate everybody's attention and time again tonight. Please stay safe, stay healthy, know that we're thinking of you. And if there's anything we can do, we will. And thank you, Latresa. You keep up your great work too, because you make a huge difference for so many. So thank you all. And Freda, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Night.